Shakti Mahamaya Sanatani Devi Yoganidra Devi Parashakti Devi Nirguna Maheshwari Devi Devi Brahma Mai Lilamai Devi Sarva Chaitanya Rupa Mahakali Devi Mahalakshmi Triloka Shivani Devi Mahavidya Mahamai Om Devim Prasanam Pranatarti Hantrim Yogindra Pujam Jugadharma Patrim Tam Sharadam Bhakti Vijnana Datrim Daya Swarupam Pranamami Nityam Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. O propitious goddess, killer of misery in souls resigned, Savior of religion in every age, by saints and sages worshipped, O Mother kind. Give us love and wisdom, thou, O grace incarnate, to thee we bow. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Shravanayapi Bhubhir Yo Nalabhyaha Shanvato Pi Bhavo Yam Navidjuhu Ascharyo Gyata Kushalo Shalabdaha Ascharyo Vakta Kushalo Nushishtaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Many there are who have never heard of the great self within. Many others, though they hear of it, fail to comprehend it. Fortunate is the one who hears of it. Wonderful is the one who speaks of it. But extremely blessed is that one who, having heard of it, from the lips of an illumined preceptor, is able to realize it here and now, in this very lifetime. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidveshavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. You are here as overseers or onlookers into the SRV Association's web channel. And this is Sharda Ramakrishna Vivekananda's own channel. So you may view and take in heaping helpings of that philosophical and intellectual meal they call Dharma, or teachings. And today is Father's Day, as you may see by my students who have also surprised me with this. And it being Father's Day, we want to think deeply and definitely about the Almighty Father, as Jesus used to say, and also about the Divine Mother that was there in the pre-Christian days in Judaism, and was there even prior to that in India, known as Shakti. and how she holds within her vast sweep of consciousness these various topics, spiritual subjects that we study, and that we have been looking into for 2 weeks now. That is in this particular topic called food, prana, and sadhana. This is our third class on that, and we'll have 2 more in the next 2 following Sundays. And we have covered quite a bit about food, although it's such a profound subject. If you remember, we started out taking apart that beautiful blessing mantra in the Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, Brahma Arpana, that is basically offering everything to Brahman as if it were a kind of food. So there is prasadam, as we studied last week. We studied the 4 different moods, or 4 different kinds of prasadam, one being food, that is anaprasada, one being manaprasada, or sometimes they call it mind, that is, and then there are other called moods, and then there's another called spirit, or adhyatma prasada. So we studied those 4 kinds of prasadam. In that case, we were taking the word prasadam not to be just physical food, but in its Sanskrit, or of its original Sanskrit, meaning clarity, if you want to pick a good English word to stand in for that. So clarity of food, clarity of mind, clarity of mood, and clarity of spirit is a wonderful sadhana in itself. So that word sadhana, for those of you who are still unclear about it, is spiritual practice or spiritual disciplines. One of the things that we find really missing in today's life, mostly around the world, but quite often in America we see it's lacking horribly as people or families who do a practice. Now, when we say sadhana, we're automatically hooking that up what's called the Dharma, which I mentioned at the top of the class. Dharma is these special spiritual teachings that you probably won't find in conventional spiritual circles, if the term can be allowed, or pseudo-spiritual circles, where basically what's going on is just dualism, that is the consideration that God and mankind are 2 separate things. But when you step closer, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, and find out that there's a deep connection between mankind and God, that is, between the Jivatman and the Paramatman, the embodied soul and the Supreme Soul, and then you come to a level of qualified non-dualism. I am the vine and you are the branches would be how Jesus used to say that. Instead of pray to your Father in heaven, he found people that were coming closer in, wanting deeper understanding, and he would then need to switch or transition from just giving out teachings about prayer and morality to teachings about Dharma, that is the connection again between yourself and God, and how eventually that's going to become an I and my Father are one type of teaching. That's non-duality, or Advaita. So those 3 stations, Vivekananda has brought back thinking about those in current times, when he came to the West in 1893 and talked about pray to their Father in heaven, and I am the vine, you're the branches, and I and my Father are one. That matched very well with the ancient Indian teachings of Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Advaita. So we think about that in terms of this vast sweep of possibilities, and really we can't really approach them through food only, or through energy only, definitely not through matter only, because there's of course God and Mammon and Caesar and what is the Lord's. So we know even here in the West, if we're talking specifically about America and its form of Christianity, that we're going to need to go a little bit deeper than that to uncover the mysteries, if you will, of spiritual life and the secrets of the Divine Mother of the Universe, who is very much behind the scenes all the time. And so It's not unusual that people would all of a sudden be caught up and say, "Oh, what do you mean? Who is she?" In fact, I got an email today. Who is the Divine Mother of the Universe you keep talking about? I would like to know her. I'm strangely attracted to that principle. And does she have form, or is she formless? And other profound questions started coming. So when you get into that level of questioning, that is Dharma per se. I mean, you've given up considerations, or you've gone beyond considerations of good and bad, and pleasure and pain, and morality and immorality, or virtue and vice. And you've arrived at a place where now you're beginning to question deeply. We call it Atma Vichara in India, questioning into the nature of reality. And as you do so, you're going to have to not just ask the question, who am I? But you're going to have to know what you're not. See what I'm not. So you're going to have to separate the wheat from the chaff, as he used to say, and become ennobled and become invested with these teachings of the Dharma, which are everyone's birthright, spiritual heritage. So food and prana and sadhana is a good way of saying that in a short sentence, how you can broach the teachings of the Dharma and do it through the means of purification. I have a chart today, and next week is called sadhana as purification, or purification for sadhana. And these levels of body, senses, and mind that are pretty much the main focus of what we call yoga in India, or yogic practice, become or need to be exposed to sadhana, purification. And that is pretty much your basic sadhana. And that's why I put this chart on the board, which we can start with today, because we have to know our disposition. We have to know our nature, not just our true nature, as I was saying. That's, of course, ultimately what we want to know. But it's not so easy to jump to it if you've had all these conditionings through many lifetimes, through different societies that have not been giving out the Dharmic teachings. India is one that has. And if you go to Buddha Dharma, that's part of India too, that originated there in India. So you'll know that these forms called Vedanta and Yoga and Buddhism and so forth are forms that not only teach but accent the need, the necessity for practicing the Dharma, for taking in these higher teachings and contemplating. And in fact, that's pretty much where the road to meditation, the path to meditation begins, is with contemplation. You can't just, again, an email written to me today, why can't I get rid of my thoughts? She was saying, see, is this one of those things that's going to take a long time to do? Do I have to sit for years and years? And I wrote back and said, yes, yes, but why think of it that way? Why think of it as something that that your thoughts are in the way? See, that's not a really good way to start out. You could actually begin thinking about the Dharma, for instance. You could change your klistavrittis, your negative thoughts first. You want those out of the way, and replace them with positive thoughts, aklistavrittis. Klistavrittis are negative thoughts, or you can call them mundane, conventional, quotidian. They're something that is not ennobling, not inspiring, and pretty much lead in a circle. But these teachings, aklistavrittis, if you can take in these positive teachings from the Dharma and replace those, then your thoughts are welcome. See, and you don't have to worry about getting rid of your thoughts anymore, because good luck with that, as they say. It's very hard for people just to sit and enter a formless mode. On that day which you do, you'll know what balance is, and you'll also know how hard it is to keep balance as a practitioner who is practicing the Dharma or practicing sadhana. You'll know how hard it is to maintain mental balance, intellectual balance, philosophical balance, and particularly spiritual balance. I and my Father are one is purely spiritual. all the rest fall in modes which are teachings that we want to broach again and approach. So when we talk about teachings that can purify, then we have to know our disposition, our nature, our temperament. And that really impinges upon knowing our previous lifetimes. And most people not only do not know their previous lifetimes, they're not even considering that a possibility that I've ever lived before. So they're starting off right away on a difficult footing. See, if they're not even considering that possibility that they've lived many times, they've had many experiences in other bodies previous to this one. The minute you begin to take in that possibility, that's the time when you can begin removing these impediments that are in the way to seeing inwardly. Now, food and prana have a great deal to do with that. As you remember us when we took up the original chart here for this series, that, and if we can switch to that for a minute just as a review, food and strength and stamina and posture and purification of the senses and equalized breathing. You might say that's just a packet right there for beginning your spiritual life, for the beginnings of spiritual life. And we looked at that, and then we looked also, and we'll look more at prana today after I finish with put an exclamation point on the teaching of food, but just as a way of saying, we know that food and prana is going to play a key role in sadhana eventually. That is, if you do a sadhana without these mainstays in place, your sadhana could end up distorted. The results of your sadhana could be misleading. We see that the case in quite a few people who intensify their spiritual life before their mind is pure, before their senses are pure, and before their body has been purified. Too much erratic energy still in the body and still in the prana, and then you do sadhana with it. Say, for instance, as we were just saying, meditation. You do meditation with it. You have very unsavory results. Okay? Sometimes good, sometimes bad, quite often mixed, but never really making spiritual progress. If you remember last week, we talked about those two spiritual impediments that Patanjali uses in yoga, anavasti tattvani and alabdha bhumikatva. One of them means taking one step forward and always falling 2 steps behind. So people always have this feeling that when they're doing their spiritual practice, since it's such an interior thing, it's of interior design, the fruits, everything is inside, and you can't really see the fruits happening, you can't really see the impurities go away, like you could see, watch a disease, an infection go away or something. Then they're not sure of their progress, and they always have this feeling of falling back. And that becomes a habit of falling back, and that's the other spiritual impediment, backsliding and believing in failure, believing in convincing yourself that you can't make any spiritual progress as a result of that. So these are specifically spiritual problems. Of the 9 impediments in yoga, those 2 are spiritual. There's 1 that's intellectual, and 3 that are mental, and 2 that are physical. So that those spiritual ones sort of bear looking at when you take up sadhana. We'll get to sadhana next week, and the final class will show some more teachings on sadhana. But right now, on the way to sadhana, that is, on the way to implementing spiritual discipline into your everyday life, then we need to look back and see how pure our food is and what kind of energy are we getting from food. And when we say food, remember, we're not just saying physical food, we're also saying mental food, intellectual food, and specifically prana, the energy that we're getting from those things. Food, prana, and psychic prana, as the first 3 of these 4 pillars tell us. And then finally we'll get to some sort of sadhana, or recognition of power within us, Shakti power. So it starts out, doesn't it, with physical power from food, then it's going to turn to subtle power from prana, and it's going to turn to intellectual power, and then it's going to turn to Shakti power. And the teachers all tell you, if you go to an authentic one, you need to be storing up power. You're expending it outwardly, and that's one of the reasons why you're not making spiritual progress. You need to be storing it up, and then once you store it up, it needs some place to go. You see, up the spine would be the metaphorical way of putting it in yoga, and Kundalini yoga, and so forth. Up the spine, physically, well, sort of, yes, but there's a subtle body you have within you that also has a subtle cerebral complex, see, with subtle centers in it. And so it's more with your own willpower, taking this energy and making it rise, causing it to rise, attracting it to more savory elevations, if you will, where the air is much purer and the Dharma teachings are much more healing. So this again is a sort of preamble to this place where we're headed in the teachings, called a balanced spiritual life that we need to be living every day, and which is grossly missing in the world today, and particularly here in the West where we are at present. We see sometimes it's very wonderful to find people with a meditation practice, and very, very fine to see that people are trying to exercise and breathe and raise their consciousness through books and so forth, and going to temple and ashrams and so forth. But to see a conclusion to all that, to see a fine result for all of that is rather rare. And to hear the Dharmic teachings being given out and shared and understood and implemented into life is also quite rare. That is, a meditation practice without the teachings to contemplate, leaves you with nowhere to come back to, even if you could reach a non-dual state of awareness, which is very rare to do. People are sitting for 8 hours a day trying to reach a place of no thought. Well, who's to say that maybe all of those negative thoughts from their past lifetimes are still back there, and they're just hitting their head against the wall to see why they're not getting satori, or why they're not getting samadhi, or why they're not getting koivaya. Could be because of a lot of subtle things that they haven't purified yet. All the great teachers all want you to go by avasta stages. You get mind gets to enlightenment by stages, Sri Ramchandra says in the Adhyatma Ramayana. So in that case then, maybe it's good to look into the realm of form and see what it is in form that's validating, what it is in the realm of form that's purifying, what it is in the realm of form that can be used as a method in which to reach a natural state of formlessness, or original mind, Om, O-M, as we say. So that's going to take some undertaking of a different kind. It's going to take some contemplation, some rumination. It's going to take turning those negative thoughts into positive thoughts, and then dwelling on the positive thoughts for a while. These are all modes and methods that India has seen for many thousand years, and which is why it has produced so many seers and saints and sages and saviors, even beyond the savior complex, exemplars of the highest merit, highest example. So in that way, we need to implement this purification, and imagine then, if you will, and it's probably not that hard to do looking out on today's world, a lack of pure food in the diet. There's not even any wisdom or knowledge given to you by your parents or their parents to them about what to eat and what not to eat. And when people come to spiritual life, quite often their first questions are around food. Notice some of the teachers are going, "Oh no, not this again." You see, we're going to have to go through this whole teaching again, as if your parents should have taught you that. Same with the yamas and niyamas. Your parents should have taught you that, so we can just get you on the Sadanga Yoga path, without having to teach you the basics. Because a lot of these teachers are through with the basics, as they've already gone on, and they want you to move on past asana, past breathing exercises, and get to the real crux of the situation, which is mind, intelligence, consciousness. See, that's where the sadhana is really the best. It's best applied in the realm of the mind, because then energy and physics, you see, everything will just right itself if the mind is pure, because that's the way these beings come into the body in the first place, with a pure mind. And then they work from there, but other beings are climbing the ladder from the outside in. So for those beings who are, the concessions are given that you better start this climb with some real good food, some good energy. We looked last time at what the 5 defects in food were on our last class, and we didn't see anything about organic or non-organic. That's more of an overlay of today's world because of overpopulation and pesticides and things like that, which are more from the modern culture. But if you look back into the old days, you'll see that basically it was that the only physical defect in food was that it didn't get enough nourishment in the soil or from water or from sun. So it all had to go back to the 5 elements, you see. And then beyond that, it started to immediately elevate the teaching towards how the food is grown, in what state of mind the food is harvested, in what state of mind it's cooked, and how you eat it, what state of mind you're in. It's all about mind from there on. The other 4 defects are all in the mind. So if they are in the mind, then you should be able to purify in the mind and come up with the swiftest and best results. So food can be explained in such a swift and easy manner that way. It's just almost natural that you should be eating foods that are not stale, impure, and overcooked, not sour, salient, and pungent, but are pure, savory, and substantial. And that takes us into this chart. Let's look at these 3 dispositions of living beings. Basically, they follow the gunas, and we've taken teachings on the gunas already. Tamasis, slothfulness, heaviness. Rajas, activity, quite often frenetic and hard to control. And sattva is balance, and we feel those in our mind every hour. Each one of them come to our mind and go. We'll have a few minutes of tiredness, and then we'll have a few minutes of restlessness, and then we'll have a few minutes of balance. The trick is, of course, recognizing those and seizing on the best one and trying to hold it. And then the others the rajas will calm down, and slothfulness will balance out, will disappear. So it's the same in the case of dispositions of people. You see here of beings. There are sattvic beings, there's rajasic beings, and there are tamasic beings, just by the very nature of their birth. That is, taking into consideration, again, past lifetimes. Then you'll come to know that how these beings got this way. God doesn't just hand out dispositions. You see, you're going to be a bad mood, and you're going to be a good person, and you're going to be an evil person. They've gotten themselves into these personalities and these positions through their own past actions, and they've elevated themselves or lack thereof. They've fallen in the case of that. So you can see here that it all has to do with these 5 things across the top. Worship, food, sacrifices they do, the austerities that they practice, and the gifts they give. Now all of this is very interesting, and isn't it, following along in line with the subject of our class, food, energy, and sadhana, or austerities and sacrifices. So you can see the sattvic being there. They call those the devas, the shining ones. They're godlike. So they're good, they're noble, Their food is pure, savoring, and substantial, and their sacrifices are all motiveless. That is, whenever they do an act of sacrifice to the plants, to the insects, to the animals, to mankind, to the ancestors, to the gods, or to the great yogis and rishis, the great teachers, it's motiveless. And that's going to set them apart. They don't have any personal investment in receiving anything in return for doing their actions and their sacrifices. They just do them as a matter of course. So it's the best and easiest sattvic mindset that they keep all the time around that. And it's easy for them to do this because tamas and rajas are not in the way. They're not getting in the way, you see. They just live in a sattvic state all the time. And from sattva, they can use that as a springboard to get beyond that third guna. Go beyond goodness to transcendence, or go beyond the chains of iron and gold to no change at all, to absolute freedom. Because goodness there would be a kind of gold chain that still binds. Their austerities, they do the threefold austerity, and I put those here below so that we would know about them. Austerity of the body. Many of you have asked this question recently, and so it's good to bring this chart back from its old days, because it's like out of the Bhagavad Gita, it's about the 11th or 12th chart I ever put together for people back of the 250 or so that exist now for these Dharma teachings that I'm so big on and trying to share with all of you. So austerity of the body, people ask about that. They think, what is that, fasting? And basically, if you look to the king of the whole subject, Sri Krishna, he says, worshipping the gods is about austerity of the body. And reverence for the wise is an austerity of the body. Purity of act, uprightness, and non-injury, or ahimsa, are all austerity of the body. So if you want to know what's the best thing to do with your body, put it into that fivefold. How many? Fivefold. There's always these 5 quintuplications that are going on everywhere that, besides being very symbolic of the quintuplication process that goes on, are also very helpful for memorization. So you could see the austerity of the body. What do they mean by austerity of the body, worshipping the gods? Because then you would make offerings to the gods and to the ancestors and so forth. You would wave incense before their images. You would offer flowers to them daily and so forth. And that would be the best way to use the energy of your body to do that. And then the rest of wherever else you might place your energy that day would be based upon first worship, you see. Deification of everything. That's the tantric way. Renunciation is not condemnation, it's deification, my teacher used to say. So you don't condemn everything. You start out with worship of what is. See, and then when that's in place, everything else flows naturally. So it's one of the keys to a divine life. Let's look at austerity of speech. Truthful speech, beneficial speech, inspiring speech, calming speech, and sacred recitations. All of those are ways to use your oral facilities or faculties to be able to create the best effect in people. That is, you want to inspire them, you want to benefit them, and basically you want to hear, right? You see, in the West it's all about seeing as believing. But in India it's always been about hearing as becoming. You see. So, or hearing as being. So seeing as believing is one form, but if you have to convince the eyes of things, you see. But if you hear the truth sets you free, Jesus said. So there's something about hearing it that goes more interior. The eyes are outward moving, right? And the ears are more amenable to going within. The eyes quite often habitually go out. They must see to believe. But they hear something perks that subtlest sense. 5 senses, right? Hearing is the 5th. It goes with ether. So you hear sounds on the ether, And then they take you to the inner ethers, the akashas within, not just the outer akasha, where the sight tends to dwell with fire. You see, you need light to see. That's not even that deep, you see. To feel and to hear is even deeper, because that's beginning to open up inner paths that you're going to tread with your consciousness in tow, you see. Hopefully leading you. You have to tow it first, later on it leads you, you see. So these five forms of speech are what the sages and seers call the austerity of speech. Very good to know, isn't it? So give up all other forms of speech. Slander, gossip, be a good one to give up. A lot of gossip. We said dharma, not drama, right? Is our great statement here. We said dharma, not drama. Well, drama is all about, based on, quite a bit on gossip. What people say and mindlessly flapping their gums, you see. Not being able to seal their lips and be silent, be noble. See? So those kinds of forms, Holy Mother, even Sri Sharda Devi used to say, to give up gossiping. And she said, just take in everything around you, but don't say a word, she said. Be silent. Be aware of everything that's going on. So it's not like you don't know that people are doing things out there that deserve gossip, you see. So you take it all in and know about it, but you don't say a word, see. And if you do say a word, it's to inspire, it's to ennoble, it's to calm, it's to benefit, see. And if you want to start out the whole package, start doing some svadhyaya, say, Om apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshuhu shrotra matra balamindriyani cha sarvani. Memorize a beautiful passage from the Vedas or Upanishads or Gita or any other of the non-dual scriptures of India, or something inspiring from the Bible or the Quran or the Old Testament, if you see. Then you're doing sacred recitation. You're honoring the atmosphere. See? It's very much like honoring the gods. See, so you want to say things that are pleasing to everyone. The gods are listening too. Remember our Shashi Maharaj, Ramakrishnananda, went to south, and nobody had heard of Sri Ramakrishna, at the time of his passing down in South India. It took a while for the word to spread. And so he was down there before Ramakrishna was even known, so he was spreading Ramakrishna's message in the south, down in Chennai, Madras. So he would used to give talks to an empty hall at first. He wrote back to Swami Vivekananda and complained about it. So I said, no, just go on giving the talks. Swami responded to him, you see. So he went on talking, and pretty soon people noticed this man, same time every night, giving this Dharma talk, you see, in this hall. So they began to get curious, and they began to come. And now it's one of the biggest centers of the Ramakrishna order down there in South India. So that kind of speech is sacred recitation. It brings about a lot of benefit for people, and eventually we'll get through to them, as we hope all these Dharma teachings will here in the West. Now, austerity of mind, selflessness would be a good way to start. Then create a fresh disposition around that. You want to, as I was telling a lady in the email that I mentioned earlier today, why worry about that your mind keeps thinking thoughts? Instead, why don't you change the negative thoughts to positive thoughts and start on that trajectory. See, that's a new, fresh disposition you've created, right? A new nadi, a new nerve you've opened up where light can flow into your brain. See, what to speak of your brain, into your mind then, because brain and mind are different. Now, mental control, that's where you're going to apply some of this austerity. Just like you controlled your speech and your tongue earlier in the austerity of speech, and you controlled the body and made it worship prior to that, now you're going to control the mind in terms of itself. It itself has to become under my control. Do mantra practice, I wrote, you see, and told her. Worship the Ishtam. Those are all forms of control. gentleness and silence of thought. There you see, you finally get to the quiet mind, don't you? And the mind will become quiet naturally. But when there's a thunderstorm out, the stream bubbles. When the water stops flowing down the mountains, the stream is silent. So eventually, when everything gets calm, you've created the right conditions, then your mind will become silent, just like a still spring. See? That's what we used to say that. Om Shanta Mahanto Nivashanti Shanto Nivashantavat Lokahitam Charantaha. There are luminaries on this earth, silent and great, who like the spring season bring about the well-being of the entire world. So that's that quiet, calm, deep, intense, deeply intense sage or seer that has seen the light or heard the great sound. See? And then body, speech, and mind will all fall in accord with that. And that's why we come into into the presence of a soul like that. We feel. Now, we jumped from these austerities to show what the threefold austerity actually was. Let's look at the rest of them. A Rajasic being would be doing austerities for gain and fame. And Tamasic being would be doing these austerities out of self-torture and destruction. They just do them in an evil manner without thinking. Now, gifts given. Let's look at the Sattvic beings' thoughts on gift. They must be selfless and they must be timely. If you read the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, then you'll see Krishna reads out pretty much the entire riot act, as they say, on giving gifts and receiving gifts, and on other products of tamas, rajas, and sattva. How to do everything in the most sattvic manner, and how to avoid doing things in rajasic and tamasic ways. So yes, the Rajasic being, they're proud and warlike. Their food is sour, salient, and pungent. Their sacrifices are in expectation of reward. You can see that in people. You can see that in your kids. They have a Rajasic nature, and it needs to be purified by sadhana, and you have to give them certain practices so that they will give up doing things for expectation of reward. Animals do that. Want a bone, doggy? Let's see, then do this for me. You're not an animal. See, you're a divine human soul. And so you can get over this expectation of reward and start doing your acts selflessly and your worship selflessly. And it's going to impinge upon these basic ways of doing your practice with energy from pure food, pure energy from pure food. So this is a connection we're trying to make here, just to remind you. Again, we said their austerities are for gain and fame, and their gifts are in expectation with grudge, quite often. They can. We see a lot of that happening at Christmas time. They want to give you a gift to please you, or sometimes not. And that gets more into the tamasic kind of mindset. These beings, when you're tamasic, you're dull and you're fearful. And your food is stale, impure, and overcooked. The sacrifices done by tamasic beings are contrary to ordinances. That is basically scriptural ordinances. The scriptures declare what should be done and what should not be done, what ought to be done. And they also declare good, bad, and mixed actions, so that you know the difference. These beings don't know that, and they won't learn it, no matter how many times you tell them. They're very obstinate. So that's what's meant by tamasic sacrifices. Now, tamasic austerities, self-torture and destruction, we already said that. And their gifts are heedless and insulting, given at the wrong time. Even if they don't intend them to be insulting, they're just heedless, so they do amount to rubbing people the wrong way. Now, let's look at the three akarmic cruels of living beings so we can just complete this chart. Down in the bottom third, again in accordance with the gunas, which remember, gunas, sattvic, balance, rajasic, active, and tamasic, slothful. So there you can see the three karmic accruals of living beings. Those beings who are sattvic, their characteristic is luminosity. They tend to be shining, like the devas. Okay? Their minds are always in that equanimous atmosphere, and you never see them leave that. So we said that about our founder here, SRV Associations, Lex Sixon. Always in a very sattvic mind state all the time, and through that he could get into higher meditations, and he could do selfless service, and he could understand the nature of reality and understand the scriptures and so forth. From this sattvic balanced place, this opens doorways to higher mind in you. And even if it doesn't, it feels a lot better than tamas and rajas, believe me. You feel much more balanced. Hopefully you will use that for a higher purpose. Now, the sattvic being's quality is happiness. This isn't just happiness mixed with sorrow, but it's a kind of contentment that's always there in them, because sattvas become the natural state of their mind. Then they're just naturally happy. You'll see that about them. The effect is knowledge, and the path is to the pure worlds. These are teachings of Sri Krishna in the Gita, basically. They get to the path of the pure worlds through the sunlit way. And that's basically by accruing knowledge. Krishna says, 4 kinds of beings worship me. One of those beings is the one who seeks knowledge. And the one who seeks knowledge is quickly and swiftly transcending suffering. They're leaving it behind at a rapid pace already. So that's a true sign of a sattvic being who's making spiritual progress, is you'll see them all of a sudden invested with knowledge. Knowledge here, we're talking about dharma, dharmic knowledge. Not just moral and ethical knowledge, not just intellectual knowledge, which sometimes can lead afoul or lead astray, but dharmic knowledge, that leads to these pure worlds. The kind of worlds where if you do come back for them, you remember where you've been. That's why you're called a shining one, you see. You're a much higher being in a much higher state of awareness, and you take a birth for whatever reason, and you bring those qualities back with you. Happiness, luminosity. That's why beings are born this way, and other beings aren't. It's not God or devil that does this. That's superstition in the name of religion. These are all teachings that follow on action and on thought. This is why act needs to be benefited by food, right? The acts you do also come from your food, right? You get energy to act from your food. And then from that you're going to get energy to think too. So it's all very, very connected and very, very crucial of connection. You have to keep this in mind all the time until it becomes instilled in your mind for all times, and you'll never forget it. Again, that's why they come back from higher worlds with this higher sattva in them. Now let's look at rajasic people, because they can create a habit of rajas, and do. Sri Krishna says in the Gita, those in rajas circle. They don't fall like those in tamas, and they don't rise like those in sattva. They circle in the same place. He often says they're born in the wombs of restless people. Restless souls are born in the wombs of restless beings. So they're born in that restless atmosphere, they develop a habit for it, and then they die in restlessness. And what do you think their next lifetime is going to be like? And that's why so many restless people are you see them out there, even in nations and cultures. They rotate or gravitate around that kind of energy, and their food is not pure. You see, if you look up above, their food is sour and salient and pungent. They're not eating pure food, so then it's very difficult for them to get out of that kind of rajasic action. it is very possible a person could transcend everything, forget food. I don't need to eat better or eat worse. With the power of my own will, I can become pure. Yes, that's possible, but it's not likely. Food is too much a part of everyone's being. It's a part of their diet. But you need another kind of diet, you see. You need intellectual food, and you need philosophical food, and spiritual food too. So this is the point. So there you see the Rajasic person's characteristic is passionate. They're driven by passion. That has come to be accepted as natural. If you have passion, you're a good person. If you don't have passion, then we don't want anything to do with you. You're boring. But a person who's enters spiritual life and becomes calm, or enters monastic life and becomes a monk, is free of their passions. See? So nobody wants to do that. They don't want to use that as an example. They want somebody who's intense, you see. So it's something to think about in terms of rajas and sattva. Because you see the sattvic person isn't so passionate, they're luminous, which means calm and peaceful and silent. Like a deep running stream, you see. Shanto, niva shanti shanto. Now, selfish desire is the effect of the rajasic life, whereas knowledge was the effect of the sattvic life. Selfish desire comes out of rajas. And it fits with everything we've seen up above too. Their path is to labor. Labor in this world. See, the path of the pure worlds are for souls who are rising. See, they've got spiritual yeast in them. And they're going to expand and rise, but that Rajasic person doesn't have that kind of leavening. It's just in one place going around the same circle all the while. Cyclic existence, kala chakra, and that can go on for many lifetimes, laboring. Now the tamasic person, the characteristic, of course, is ignorance, dark. The quality is delusion. The effect is heedlessness, and the path is suffering. So, at least the person who labors gets a little bit of pleasure out of what they do, you see. So they're back and forth between pleasure and pain, happiness and sorrow. But the tamasic person, alas, suffering almost all the time. And I've seen some people who are good people who are suffering all the time. So it doesn't actually fit into our pat scenario of what's supposed to be good and what's supposed to look bad, you see. But these gunas can enter into many different kinds of minds, which is why we need to know our disposition. So this chart, some clarification from Sri Krishna in the Gita, in very ancient times when they studied each other and they studied their own temperaments and said, who am I, you see, or what am I not, you see. This is an ancient teaching, and people used to consider that. Now they just act. See, they don't know who they are, and they just throw themselves into the field of action and see what comes up. The same with children. I'll just throw myself at another person, have a relationship, and have a family, and see what kind of children come. See? It's all random. You see, nothing is very figured or wise. But for the sattvic person, that knowledge will dictate a different path for them, to a higher world, to a pure world. So this chart falls very much in accord with food and energy. And you can see how it's beginning to lead towards sadhana. I would say that sometimes maybe even the sattvic person is not practicing sadhana. Sadhana is a cutting edge. Dharma is a defining edge. You see, the gods remain the gods because they're not practicing sadhana so much. They're observing some higher sattvic rules, you see, and pleasures and so forth. But who do you see that practices sadhana? The seers, the yogis, the rishis, and so forth. Those beings get a different kind of fruit, don't they? That's not mentioned here. See, those are beings that are going beyond the three gunas. The word in Sanskrit is Trigunatita. One of the Swamis of the Ramakrishna order, direct disciple of the great master, took that name, Swami Trigunatitananda. So they've actually found the secret to go beyond sattva and beyond happiness and contentment and goodness and so forth, and beyond the gods, beyond the pure worlds, to transcendence. And if they come back, you'll see them as the greatest exemplars of mankind. So there's another chart I want to show you that puts the final cap on this teaching about food. And it has to do with the origin of disease. And it's a teaching that comes from Lord Vashishta and Yoga Vashishta, that great scripture. You can see here that the title of the chart is Origin and Perpetuation of Disease. It all came about in the Yoga Vashishta in accord with the story of Shikidvaja. And when Ram heard this story from Lord Vashishta being told him, he asked, what is this origin of disease? And we see it and causes so much suffering. It's one of the things that put the Buddha off when he left the palace as a teenager. And the very same thing happened to Sri Ram as a teenager when he left King Dasaratha's palace and went out on pilgrimage with his brothers and half-brothers. And he was so joyous before he left, and then when he saw suffering in the world outside, he became very dejected and silent, and didn't like to see the specter of suffering out there, and had, up to that time as a teenager, lived pretty much a sheltered existence, as we would say. So in the case of Buddha and Ram, these are great souls, of course, who are playing this scenario across the face of the cosmic body, humanity and gods and everything. They come here to wake us up to the imminence of this kind of problem that we're conveniently shirking or sweeping under the carpet and so forth. So when it comes on a individual level, we can deal with it usually, or some people have a hard time even dealing with it on the individual level, but the collective level is something that most beings can't even comprehend. See, the ocean of suffering, that is this specter, this is very daunting for people. So a lot of it then gets addressed in these teachings by the seers like Lord Vashishta. He says, to answer the question of the origin of disease that Sri Ram asks about when he's thinking about all these people who are suffering, he gives a teaching of these two different kinds, which is of the mind, and then there's a secondary disease, which is of the body. So he puts it in the case of mind right away. Mind with its inherent diseases. You can see this up here. It's a very important statement. Right there, we find out that diseases don't come from nature, they don't come from germs, they don't come from anything by not washing your hands and so forth. Diseases come from the mind, and then they work their way out through the thought process and into nature and into germs, and otherwise some beings contract germs and some people don't. Some people are impervious to disease, some people are susceptible to it more than others. So, and some people actually learn the art of willfully doing away with diseases and their insinuation, and they stay healthy most of their lives. See, they've learned that somehow. For instance, the yogis can do that. So, with those facts accounted for or taken into consideration, then you can see how even a statement right away by Lord Vashishta to Sri Ram, all diseases are inherent in the mind, clears the field right away. Talk about prasad. See, here's a good example of how to eat pure food. If you've been thinking about disease in all the wrong ways, and your society has been thinking about it in all the wrong ways, pretty soon they're inventing diseases. New names, new diseases, and new pills for them. See? And people are complaining about that or not. Maybe they're just running towards this outer effect and solutions that are external only. See? But what about prasad? Clarity. Clarity of food, clarity of mood, clarity of mind. How would I clear up my thinking about it? You just hear Lord Vashishta step up to you when you ask the question about the origin of disease and tell you all diseases are inherent in the mind. And immediately all your thinking would be prasad around the subject, wouldn't it? Oh, if they're all in the mind, then I could probably get rid of them in the mind, see, and not suffer externally anymore. So all of a sudden you have a path to the pure worlds. You see, you have clarity of mind around any given subject. Maybe that was one of the subjects you weren't clear about. Say for Buddha and Ram going out of the palace and they saw illness and they didn't know that illness and disease was inherent in the world. They had still been thinking somewhere in their minds when they were young, this is a perfect world. And they were absolutely right. In their own way of thinking, particularly, these were great souls. But they had to show humanity how to step up and accept the fact that disease is inherent in the world, inherent in the mind, that you're never going to have a perfect world. Swami Vivekananda puts it this way: saying a good world is like saying hot ice. So if you believe that this is a good world, then you're completely deluded as far as India and its seers are concerned. The first noble truth of Buddhism: there is suffering. Is that a pessimistic message? No, because the second noble truth is there's a cause for suffering. And the third noble truth is there's a way out of suffering. But you'll never find the way out of suffering unless you accept that this world is full of suffering. How did Holy Mother put it? The suffering of this world has gotten into the very marrow of my bones. See? I've seen women having 20 children, you see, and 5 of them die, but they go on having children nevertheless. It's a piggish existence they're living, she said. A bestial existence, you see. So you have to take into account and accept the fact that suffering is in the nature of the world. And talk about more prasad for you. The world comes from the mind. It doesn't come from nature. Nature only supplies the physical elements: earth, air, fire, water, and ether. But those are connected to the 5 senses, and the 5 senses are connected to the mind, isn't it? Where would anything be without the mind? If you didn't have a brain, see, like the Tin Man, was it? See, if I only had a brain, well, the spiritual Tin Man's going to have to start thinking, if I only had a mind. See. Oh, it was Scarecrow, sorry. I've just been corrected. The Scarecrow who wanted the mind. Tin Man wanted the heart. Well, both are important. So, in the case of the spiritual Scarecrow, he's saying, I need a mind, you see. I need mind only. I need to know that what the mind-only schools are teaching me in terms of the world, how it's all come out of the mind, out of my thought process. My thoughts are pure, and my energy is going to be pure, my acts are going to be pure, and the world's going to be pure. Then I could step outside my Father's palace and say, see, that's a perfect world. But then I'd have to note the fact that there are others who don't believe in my perfect world. They don't fit into my perfect world. They're suffering. They have diseases. So this is where Ram is coming from when he asks this, and Vashishta says, first know that all diseases are inherent in the mind. The mind holds them. Now, it's a matter of whether you're going to become susceptible to them or whether you can reject them, alleviate them, keep them from developing in body and life. And your energy is going to play a big part in that. You might notice that when you first feel the onslaught of a cold, you feel it through your energy. See? If you're very, very aware, very conscious of the fact, you'd feel there's an erratic, there's a germ in my energy. The germ in my body is being activated by a germ in my energy. See, there's an erratic vibration. This is how the father of yoga teaches it too. So first you'll feel, erratic energy, then you'll get sick. And your energy is not is being affected by mind, isn't it? And the food you ate has been very important, pure or impure, in how your energy, how the vibration of your energy was manifesting or expressing itself. So again, the connections between food, prana, and mind, or sadhana, practice. Now, Vasishtha goes on to explain the primary diseases of the mind are sara and samanya. Sara means essential, that is, diseases that are associated with rebirth. And samanya means ordinary, diseases that are incidental to the body. So he breaks it down again for Ram in a very masterful way by saying that the essential diseases are associated with rebirth. Those are due to some direct causes, like the diseases in your mind that come with you in your body-brain package are there because of the absence of discriminative action in a previous lifetime. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't just that some people are just born to be more sick than others. It's more that some people in a previous lifetime learned to discriminate and therefore coming in with a healthier body-mind mechanism than others based on their discriminating thought and action, right? So here we're making a direct connection to the fact that people who are born sick or sickly are probably people who failed to discriminate in a previous lifetime. Discriminate their thoughts and their actions. And also want of mastery over the senses and the objects. It's been a long time known, a fact that has been known by people, that if you indulge too much in sensual appetite, you get sick. Your energy gets sapped. And your energy cannot then, they talk about immune systems, but you have an immune system in your mind too, and in your prana. There's a kind of immune system that's going to keep those erratic vibrations from mounting and happening. Distension and distraction of the orifices of the nerves of the joints is how quite often it's taught. Everything is connected to your from your mind to your body's health, and when these nerves get affected by bad food, by bad thoughts, negative actions, and so forth, not just in this lifetime alone, but just taking that as the scenario for now, in this lifetime alone, then you're going to get these diseases of the body. So that's how it's explained. Also, inability to stem desires and egotism in the mind. Vasishtha tells Ram these are the three causes, direct causes for disease in this lifetime, all stemming from past births. So disease associated with rebirth, sara it's called. Now samanya, we can see, is ordinary disease incidental to the body. So this is the disease that you see coming up in this lifetime. You don't know about the causes necessarily, but here's the result. Mental delusion leading to mental disease, leading to negative thoughts and actions, leading to karmas, leading to physical diseases. This is how Vasishtha tells Ram how diseases, which are incidental to the body, manifest in the body. It's again all coming from the mind, isn't it? Delusion of the mind leading to mental disease. That is like, erratic thoughts and chaos in the mind and lack of peace, lack of discrimination, leading to negative thoughts and actions. Now all of a sudden the person, unable to control his mind, is engaging in negative thoughts and negative actions. And that leads to karma, and those karmas lead to your physical diseases. So you might be partially right when you say, I got sick because of my karmas, but then you're going to have to go back to what caused the karma, right? And you'll find out that it's your negative thoughts and actions. Prior to that, it was your mental disease that was there because of your delusion, your mind's delusion. And then you can start thinking about previous lifetimes. Sara. You can start thinking about my lack of discrimination, lack of discriminative wisdom. So I'd better gain that in this lifetime so that my rest of my life and any future lives I may take will be healthy ones. Healthy body, healthy senses, healthy mind. So this is how they're going to take apart the problem or the subject, if you will, of disease in India. In the earliest of times, this was a long time before Patanjali took it up, in 140 or 50 AD, when he got a hold of yoga teachings, brought them together in a consummate way, and started teaching on the level of physical, prana, mind, intellect, psychology, and spirituality, all the levels that he taught yoga on. This was thousands of years prior to that. So you might say that Vasishtha and Patanjali are bookends to holistic health in India. Bookends. Over thousands of years. And both concurring with one another, but each taking a little bit different taking a different look on it and explaining it in their own unique ways. Now, we've swept through that rather quickly, but you can see the points made, how Vasishtha answered Sri Ram's question about the origin of disease. Now you can see in the lower part of the chart this process of rising and falling of disease. And so Vasishtha goes into another discourse for Sri Ram, who's in his teenage years at this time, and he tells him how the rise and fall of disease takes place. Here it is in a list. First, mental agitation weakens the nervous system. You don't have any peace of mind, you don't have discriminative wisdom, you're not taking the dharmic teachings, and so forth and so on. And so your mind gets agitated, and that weakens your nervous system. Then prana gets arrested and fails to pervade the body. Remember, we looked at the 5 kinds of prana, and we'll probably look at them again in one of these charts, right? We actually talked about them in this original chart we're using, our main chart, about how prana gets arrested and fails to pervade the body. So there's a prana that's moving through everything, and now it gets arrested. It can't move anymore. So that particular energy isn't getting in full force, or in part, in full. It's not getting to the organs, and to the mind, to the brain, and so forth, to the senses. And so they begin to contract certain kinds of diseases. Disease doesn't have to just mean I'm not feeling well. It can mean I'm not seeing well, I'm not hearing well, I'm not thinking well. I'm atrophied, I can't move well, see. And probably a few asanas isn't going to free up or solve that problem. There's going to have to be something deeper that's going to go on, or it'll return again. So prana gets arrested and fails to pervade the body due to mental agitation. Remember, that's first and foremost. Mind should be even and peaceful at all times. You should never lose your peace of mind. Holy Mother said, right? Peace of mind is first and foremost, she said. You should not lose it for any reason whatsoever. That means not for job, not for children, not for the death of a loved one, not for anything. You never lose your peace of mind, because that'll cause mental agitation and you'll fall from that. You won't be able to maintain the Dharma. You won't be able to maintain the teachings. You won't be able to maintain your own sanity. So then prana vibrates at an unequal rate. Remember, you felt unequal breathing before, so you tried to even out your breath, right? Puraka, kumbhaka, rechaka. Puraka, kumbhaka, rechaka. You breathed in evenly, you held evenly, and you breathed out evenly, and pretty soon, the prana started to return to its normal rate. But here, it's from a chaotic mind, you're getting an abnormal rate of prana vibration, you see. And it's causing all sorts of problems. We looked at 2 or 3 of them last week, remember? Uneven breathing, Angamejayatva, Your limbs are restless all the time. You can't find anywhere to put them. You can't be comfortable in your body. So these are some problems with unequal prana. Now the nerves quiver, causing the body to weaken. Breathing becomes uneven and body begins to shake. Now, you're still going on with your life. All of this is happening to you, right? Like I said, even good people have these things happen to them. And they can get worse, so that actually you won't call that person good anymore. They were good once, but now they've turned into a nervous wreck. Nerves, right? Energy. The implication. So that's the point for the next point here is that food ingested in this state turns to poison. So that's the real downside of it. And this is where food comes in at the tail end of the whole thing too, not just at the beginning where you're starting your sadhana, but when you're failing life, food is there to remind you, that it doesn't matter what kind of food you take at that point. If your minds become erratic, your pranas become arrested, it's vibrating at an unequal rate, and your breathing becomes unequal, and your body begins to shake, and then you take good organic food, it won't do you any good at all. You can take chicken soup when you have a cold, and your body's not going to heal until your mind turns to peace again. That's why some people don't get well and other people do, because they change their mind. That's why some people die of cancer and other people don't, because they change their mind. We have hands-on experience with this every day in this very organization. People who have contracted cancer and decide, I'm not going to die. And so they don't. And others who have, I've got cancer, I'm going to die. They're gone within months. It's really, prana comes into the mind, comes into the body by an act of will, right? Out of the Atman. So you're the Atman, and then you have a mind, it has a will, and then there's energy, and then there's a body. And you dictate that from your Atman. See, if you fail to have discriminative wisdom that the body is different than the Atman, then this is where the whole thing begins to fall. The house of cards begins to fall down. And this is what you're seeing in people who are very sickly, very ill. And maybe will never recover. See, this is, it's gotten past a solution. So when you ingest food in the state like this, it turns poisonous in your body. That's why food is not helping you. Then energy from food is stymied and disease sets in, because you're not getting food from energy from good food. The energy itself. That's why I just mentioned this earlier today, right? You can't say meditate with a unhealthy body and unhealthy energy and expect to get satori. This is probably not going to happen, you see. Now, you see here the indirect causes for physical disease. Vasishta wouldn't be able to make his point clear unless he used these as a concession. Most people think eating unwholesome food makes you sick. Yes, but there are people who eat unwholesome food who are enlightened. People who have no access to good food, who have to eat certain food, who nevertheless remain fine through power of will. So eating unwholesome food is not the only cause for disease. It'd be better if you could eat pure food, but it's not necessarily, it's an indirect cause of disease, not a direct cause of disease. Also living in unhealthy conditions, performing actions at inauspicious times. So food and act, very important. Evil desires and bad thoughts. Now we're getting into the mind. You see how he started out with food, then he moved to act. Now he's going to thought, right? Make these connections as you think about these. You're not just taking these one at a time individually, but how they connect. Then a person begins to inflict injuries on others, association with evil beings, longing for improper attainments, distension and contraction of the orifices of the nerves of the joints, interruption of the prana flow in the body, and subjection to the 5 elements. There at the bottom would be your cold, you see. Oh, make sure you put your coat on before you go outside in the rain, because you'll get a cold. Probably your mother telling you that gave you a cold. I ran outside here when I was living outside in the rain all the time. I was wet most of the time when I was a boy without a coat on. And I got colds, but I didn't get colds too. Sometimes I got colds sitting inside near the fireplace. So it's going to depend upon your mind and the susceptibility you have, your energy, your food, how the energy is flowing through nerves that are either crimped, like stepping on a hose, or wide open and receptive to health, to healthy living, to healthy thinking. See? So these are ideas that people in the contemporary times got a hold of. See? But they decided to disconnect them completely from spirituality. When Vashishta is telling Rama about this, it's all about mind on down. You don't just X out mind, X out prana, X out food, and then just end up with pills and problems and pills, you see. You have to be noble and have to be faithful to the holistic health topic. So you have to be faithful to it. It's spirit, mind, energy, body. It's not just body and energy. Mind is of course the most important part of that, because the spirit never gets sick. You see, your Atma never gets disease or is never unhealthy. So it has to start from the mind as the intermediary, and then energy and food. So this is why we want to end with this chart and put a capper on this whole process of food, gain strength, increase stamina, master the prana, master the posture, purify your senses, and then breathe equally. Those things will keep you fit and ready for uncovering prana and its connection with psychic prana, which means mind, intelligence. And I think we should stop here for our break, and when we come back we'll take up this next level of teaching about the prana itself, which is a very hidden thing, and as Vivekananda told us when he was here in the late 1800s, something that we're not providing for. Prana and subtle senses are things that we're not aware of in our present ideology, and so that makes up more of a complete package when you start considering spiritual life and its benefits. So here we will end and take a little pure food ourselves called prasad. We hope you're doing the same at home, and we'll return in 15 minutes. Namaste. Om Bhadram Karnebhihi Srinayama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabhirya Jatraha Stirai Rangaishtushtuvam Sastanuvir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayoho Svastina Indra Vrida Shravaha Svastina Pusha Vishwadevaha Svastina Starksho Arishtanemihi Svastino Brihaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual, and hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother of the universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Vidya Avidya Devi Maheshani Shri Yoga Mai Chakti Devi
Jaya Vijaya Devi Vasundari Shri Mantra Shakti Mata Deva Devi Dasa Tattva Devi Shakti Darshini